Hey, second grade, Miss Shannon here to talk to you about our read aloud from the previous day, Grace for President by Kelly DiPuccio. Now, the other day, you listened to this read aloud and answered a couple questions as you listened. And today, we are going to focus in on our comprehension skill, which is point of view, and figure out how do some of the characters feel in the story? What is their point of view? Point of view. A character telling the story has feelings about the events. This is the character's point of view. The words I, my, me, and mine tell who is speaking. So the words I, my, me, and mine show that a character is telling the story from his or her own point of view. Dialogue tells what the character says, thinks, and feels. So it's important to pay attention to when a character is speaking in a story because it gives you a clue about how that character feels. Different characters can have different points of views. Look for how they think, speak, and act to know their point of view. In our story earlier this week titled A Difficult Decision, we learned that Wyatt and Paul had different points of views about the same event, finding a missing Game Master toy on the playground. Well, for our story Grace for President, we are also going to compare and identify two different characters that have different points of views. So thinking back to the story you listened to yesterday, who do you think is one of the characters we will focus on today? You guessed it, Grace. She is the main character of our story, so we want to make sure that we're able to figure out what is her point of view. How does she feel about events in the story? Remember that this is the graphic organizer we will be using throughout the week. Okay, so here is how we are going to organize the blank page in your composition notebook. So first, go grab your composition notebook and turn to the next fresh page. You are going to put today's date at the top. Label this page point of view, because that is our comprehension strategy. And don't forget to include the book we are working with, which is Grace for President. You're going to create a table that has 3 columns and 3 rows with the top 3 boxes in row 1 labeled character, clue, and point of view. Go ahead and pause this video if you need time to get your paper set up, and then press play when you're ready to continue. Okay, second graders, so we are jumping right in to kind of the middle of the story. Once again, you should have listened to our story a previous day, so this story should be familiar to you. As a reminder, Grace learned that there were no girl presidents or no presidents who were women in history, and she said, well, I want to become president then. So she is running for class president at her school, and she is running against a character named Thomas Cobb. And so here is Thomas, and we're going to pick up in the middle of the story. So listen as I read this page aloud. Meanwhile, Thomas wasn't worried. He had cleverly calculated that the boys held slightly more electoral votes than the girls. At recess, Thomas studied his spelling words. During lunch, he worked on his latest science experiment. After school, he played soccer. So if you remember, during school and after school, Grace is campaigning all the time, always talking to her constituents or her classmates, seeing what she could do to help as president. However, this page starts off with noting that Thomas wasn't worried. Why wasn't Thomas worried about winning? Yes, he had calculated that if he could get all of the boys to vote for him, then he would win, no matter what. Because when the teachers assigned states to all the students, he realized that there were more boys or boys that held more votes than the girls. So Thomas figures, hey, as long as all the boys vote for me, I'm winning, no problem. He wasn't worried. So he continued doing the things he normally does after school, which was having fun and working on his schoolwork. So let's focus in on this section of the story. He wasn't worried because he had calculated that he could win if all of the boys voted for him. Okay, that is what is happening in the story. That is the clue. I've circled the clue in our story. This could also be called text evidence because I am finding my support in the text. So for our point of view chart, I can fill in the character's name, which is Thomas, our clue from the story, which was that Thomas calculates the votes he will get from the boys. So he calculates how much he will have if all of the boys vote for him. How does that make him feel? What is Thomas's point of view about the election? Does he think he's going to lose? No. Does he think he's going to win? Yes, he thinks he will win as long as all of the boys will vote. So that is his point of view, that Thomas thinks he's going to win the election. He's not nervous about it. He's not worried. He thinks, I've got this, because of how he calculated if the boys would all vote for him. That's his point of view. He is not worried. He thinks he will win. So right now you can pause this video to fill in your chart for character, clue, and point of view for Thomas. Press pause if you need to. Okay, now we are going to focus in on another character. We will focus on Grace. So here's a photo from our book, Grace for President. You can see standing at the podium is Sam. He is going to be casting the final vote in the election. If you can see the scoreboard in the back, you'll remember that Thomas was at 268 votes. Grace had 267. They needed to reach 270 to win. So maybe in your head right now, you could figure out how many more electoral votes did Thomas need to win, and how many more did Grace need to win? Well, Sam was the deciding vote. The state that he represented would give either candidate more than 270 and win the election. Now remember, Sam is a boy, and Thomas thinks that as long as all of the boys vote for him, that he will win. So that's where we pick up with this story. Thomas grinned. Grace felt sick. Sam walked up to the microphone. He looked at Thomas. He looked at Grace. What happened next? Do you remember, second graders? Who won? That's right. Sam was brave and voted for Grace. Grace ended up winning the election. So even though Thomas had thought he had everyone's votes, all the boys' votes, he really didn't. But let's go back for a moment. And we're going to look at just this first moment in time. When Sam walks up to the podium, Thomas is grinning from ear to ear because he is like, yes, I've got this. All the boys voting for me, I'm going to win. And then we have Grace. She doesn't feel that same confidence that Thomas does. Instead, the author tells us that she felt sick. Grace felt sick. I'm going to circle that piece of information as a clue. Okay? Grace felt sick is our text evidence that tells us what Grace's point of view is. How does Grace feel in that moment when Sam walks up to the microphone to cast the final vote? Why? Well, think about that. Because it is your turn to complete your chart, I have filled in the character's name of Grace, and I also, if you'll remember from the previous slides, circled what your clue might be. So if you need to rewind this video and see what that is, you can. But I want you to figure out and tell me, what is Grace's point of view in that moment? Right before Sam cast his final vote, how was she feeling? What was she thinking? Okay. If Thomas's point of view was that Thomas thinks he is going to win the election, how did Grace feel at that time? Did she feel confident, like she was going to win? It's up to you. I want you to tell me and fill in that final box in your composition notebook. All right? Once you have finished, you can take a picture of your chart and put it in the green box. Or if you are having trouble with your video, or your video camera, I should say, you can type your answers in the boxes on this table on the very last slide. But everyone, don't forget to click submit. And I hope you enjoyed listening to Grace for President. It is really a fun reel out. And I was so excited that Grace won in the end. But not to say that Thomas wasn't a deserving opponent. I hope you enjoyed the story as much as I did. Have a great afternoon.